Howdy, folks. Happy New Year. Happy 2025. Fingers crossed, anyway. Um, Welcome to a new show. This is my first live stream of 2025. So I'm going to be going over a variety of different things, some announcements and stuff. I'm not sure how long I'm going to be on, but start the video, get things rolling. All right. So welcome to 2025. Although most of you have been here longer than I have. That's not a joke. It's just I feel like I've been in a time warp. I think my last show was on December 7th. A lot has happened since then. Holidays, that kind of stuff. Had a minor injury that I've been recovering from. So I've just been out of it and kind of enjoying just taking a break from social media. But now I'm back. And the shenanigans and jibber jabber are kind of hitting like a peak. Everybody's back at work now. Schedules are starting to, settle back into sort of normality, and the news and discussions and the general condition of the culture is ungood. I think that's probably the best explanation for it. So I just kind of wanted to get in here and touch base with people who have been around for a while. I see a few of you in the chat. Just wanted to say hi to a few people. As always, Pragmatic Crystal, thank you very much for the reminders, and good to see you. Happy New Year. Let's see. Stephanie Helms is here. Good to see you as well, Stephanie. And thank you very much for the notifications to the Transpositions room. And hello to everybody from Transpositions if you're watching. Let's see. I think that's it, other than Spooky Bed Hair for right now in the chat. But good to see you, Spooky. How are things in the UK? Hopefully things are maybe getting better than they are here politically. Hard to know. So it looks like, you guys kind of like got out of some of the Tory mess after 14 years of them improving everything. And now we're, I guess, because the United States is hopelessly self-involved. We didn't watch any of that as an object lesson of what movement conservatism can do to, established political systems. We're going to attempt it here. And somehow we're going to not repeat all the mistakes the Tories did there. So, yeah. Fabio, good to see you. Good evening to you. Zach is here. Good to see you, Zach. Fabio, I've been trying to... there was something I was going to ask you about. There was something about you guys' F1 coverage. I'll think of it eventually. Not having done these in a while, I'm feeling pretty... it took me forever to get set up. I actually kind of forgot the software. Lord Britthang is here. Are Doug's kids going to get deported? No. No. Well... I mean, who knows? I mean, Trump has already fired, 15 inspectors general, which was against the law. But, I mean, what are they going to do? Impeach him? That doesn't work. Our system's not set up for accountability, no matter what conservatives say. So, Dean Kruger's here. I would like to apologize on behalf of South Africa for giving you Elon Musk. It's not your problem. Not your fault. In fact, his mom, I believe, is English. So... even if you guys are holding yourselves accountable, it's only 50% there. And his dad is goofy. And if anything, apologize for Elon Musk's dad. No, it's not on you. It's not on you. Don't worry about that. Brian Stevens is here as well. Good to see you. At least we don't have Trump. Exactly. I feel like, I would trade, at this point, I would actually probably trade Trump for Boris Johnson. And that's saying something. So some of the things I've been noticing, the usual kind of shenanigans that are going on politically, I've noticed that while people should not be overreacting to, this isn't my opinion, this seems to be the reaction coming from right-wing commentators and stuff online, don't worry about the fact that the president is essentially open for business in terms of bribes. He established a cryptocurrency bucket. You can just go there and pay to play. You should not be upset about that. What you should be freaking out about are the usual conservative bugaboos. Your kid can go to school one day, one sex, and then be transformed into the opposite one and sent back to you, and you had no idea it ever happened. Bobby comes back to Roberta, and the school liberals did it to them because it was good for you and good for them. Of course, this is not true. We also execute kids after they're born. Babies are executed regularly, according to them, So there's just an enormous amount of horse shit in political discourse and in cultural discourse in general. But the raging double standard that keeps going is coming from the guys that always say facts don't care about your feelings and all this kind of stuff as they clutch their pearls over imaginary horse shit, like the people eating people's pets, or a variety of other boogeymen that they can come up with. Not surprisingly, all their boogeymen have something to do with race, gender, and immigration statuses as well. So as an example of this increasing hysteria, and what is going to become, I think, really commonplace at least over the next year, is going to be the raising of the temperature on an establishment of conservative political correctness, because there is no group more obsessed with political correctness than modern American conservatives, for whatever that means, especially authoritarians. And I give you as an example this flake. Let's see here. Her name is Misha Petrov, and she is absolutely cracked. I suspect that she's a Poe. I don't really think that she's actually like serious about some of this stuff. If she's not, she plays a good game. She knows the jargon, and she knows how to push the buttons. But this one right here, I found particularly pathetic. Unlearn your whiteness, anti-white insanity exposed. If you watch this video, and I recommend that you watch at least part of it, you only need to watch about the first 2 minutes of it. And then if you are competent at Googling at all, you will find out that the fire here that needs to be put out is a controversy that started about 2 or 3 years ago from a class taught at the University of Chicago called The Problem with Whiteness. And it was taught by, it's like a seminar kind of thing. And it's taught by a professor in sociology, in the sociology department there. Studies on these kinds of topics in sociology are well established. They are long-term. And if you know anything about them, even if you don't know anything about them, even if you just Google the class, you'll find out that particular class in some way, shape, or form has been taught at the University of Chicago for at least 10 years. But a couple of years ago, a right-wing college student and wannabe activist saw a posting for that particular class on a board and posted it on Twitter and freaked out about it. Oh, they're trying to erase us. The usual kind of Charlottesville horseshit. And that ended up trickling out to the point where the professor and the school were getting death threats over this, because of course the reaction was measured, nuanced, responsible. And of course it wasn't. People lost their minds and immediately thought that the most responsible thing to do was to threaten people's lives, or at the very least harm them or slash their tires. Because, emotional intelligence in this country is tip top. So once I Googled this and realized that this was something that had happened a while ago, her video from 9 days ago is her clutching her pearls about something that was about pearls clutched like 2 years ago. It's uniquely pathetic. They are going to continue to rehash this stuff. I don't even know if she's that big a deal. I don't know how many followers she has. What is she at? 480,000 subscribers. That's a pretty good following, right? I've only got like 2,000. So, but it's a lot of this. A lot of this is like this one. Liberals outraged over Carrie Underwood performing at Trump's inauguration. They weren't actually most of the stuff that I saw. And as a socialist, I crawl around in circles that frankly curl her hair. It was expected. When she showed up there, like, the reaction wasn't, how dare she? The reaction was, I knew it. I knew Carrie had it in her. And that was about it. There is a question about the U.S. which has been haunting me for months. How's the cats and dogs situation in Springfield? As predicted, it has been completely forgotten. It will be brought up again as they start to remove more people from there, because I'm pretty sure he's actively working on removing any of the temporary shelter or the political statuses for refugees for Cubans, Haitians, and Venezuelans. So they're looking to try to deport a lot of them as well. Our good buddy Pine Creek has a short about a man from Haiti, Jesus, a man from Haiti being deported, and it was like local news or something like that, or cable news, and he's screaming about it, and I'm not exactly sure what the point is. So it looks like even the news is starting to cover people being removed. They are being deported. Several planes have actually already been turned away from various Latin American countries. I know Colombia is refusing to take any of them. They are turning them back and saying, until you have a dignified process for this, we're not going to accept your military planes to land here and just dump people off. That's not how it's done. Jefferson, do you have my email? Just ping me there. Yeah, I'll do that. There was something I wanted to ask you about, and I will try to remember it. No promises. It may not come back. Do you think Trump should be deported since he's a first-generation American on the mom's side? I mean, who's to say? Elon Musk violated the terms of him coming over. He was supposed to be over here when he came over and actually be working, and he wasn't. So Jeff's alive. Good to see him, Maya. Just barely. That makes you feel better. Yeah, I'm still around, still here. I was enjoying the time off, but it's good to see you. There is still a channel called No White Guild. I don't understand why they have not disappeared like Red Ice. It's anybody's guess. Yeah. Hello, it's been hell without you, Jefferson. I hope you're well. Good to see you, James F. Well, I hope not. A few other. I haven't really been watching much, so I haven't seen like what's been going on. I'm behind on some of the people. Like I haven't caught up with some of Maya's live streams. I haven't caught up with JL Warren's live streams. Like I've just been kind of like out of it. And I kind of got into playing a couple of like casual video games and just chilling, just completely vegging out. Anytime I'd get a notification for news, I would delete it and that and good food and breathing exercises. It's been nice on the blood pressure. His kids are also first generation Americans. No, well, it's rules for thee, not for me. And it's been pretty apparent. So let's see. Let's get into what I wanted to get in here. And that is some of this nonsense from Pine Creek. He did an excerpt of a long live thing that he did. And I thought the title was just bizarre. Let's see. Loading. There we go. So, yeah, I'll just make this full screen, I guess. And I just found out my son was called the N-word. We discuss DEI. Okay. I don't know. Those don't seem to follow. So, I'm a little bit lost. Yeah. I'm not sure what he's doing with. Stephanie says the ships carrying people here were cargo ships. The planes throwing them out are cargo planes. We are uniquely pathetic people. Yeah. Yeah. It's just making the United States. I mean, it's one thing. Like, I mean, we knew we had it in us, and 77 million, 78 million people, I think whatever the total count was, voted for the guy. The U.S. has a unique capacity to be trashy as hell. And not uniquely mean-spirited. There's plenty of other cultures that do this kind of stuff, and this shit comes in waves. The aggravating thing to me about this is listening to these people actually try to wear this garbage like it's a virtue. They're standing up for the country. They're purging the unclean, as if that's not just blatant pandering to fascistic tendencies. I mean, the chowderhead in the video next to me, Pine Creek Doug, is one of the people that talks like this. It's pathetic. So I'm allergic to pine nuts. Aren't we all? Pragmatic Crystal does bring up 90 million didn't vote. Yeah. And in fact, turnout for Democrats was down by like 2.7% or something like that. So if they had gotten the same percentage of output that they'd gotten around Biden, it would have been closer. It would have been a close victory, but it would have been a Kamala Harris victory. So 90 million people just shrugged their shoulders and were like, well, if fascism happens, I guess there's nothing I can do about it. Well, there was. It's called voting, and you need to vote overwhelmingly. And they didn't. But Anybody that was remotely tickled about any of the nonsense that Donald Trump was talking about got their ballot in. Because if you notice, his vote really didn't increase. That the total numbers did, but you'd expect those numbers to go up with increases in population and that kind of thing. So it was proportionate to that. The Democratic turnout numbers, were about the same or a little less, and so that increase in Democratic votership just wasn't there. And there's a lot of people that have analyzed this, a couple of different ways. So. Let's see. This is why we say that voting is literally the least you can do. Yeah, and for 90 million people, they couldn't even muster up that. So, and who knows? I mean, even the people that did vote, when they actually talked to them, there was the New York Times was covering, 15 different people that were undecided, and then up until the election, they finally pulled the trigger on who they were going to vote for. The majority of them that just voted for Trump, and their reasons were absolutely incoherent and horseshit. Some of them were absolute just horseshit excuses. Well, the economy. No, it wasn't the economy. Stupid. That's not why you voted for him. Like, I'm really worried about gas prices. Like, didn't you just buy a new Ford F-150? And not a Lightning that you charge, not the EV one. You bought just an F-150 that gets 10 miles per gallon. Give me a break. And well, eggs are expensive. I just saw you whipping them at your neighbor's house. Like, come on. That's not why you voted for Trump. Try again. But also in that news, eggs gonna get really expensive. When it was Biden in, even just like last week or 2 weeks ago, the eggs were expensive because Biden did it. And now all of a sudden, because Trump is in there, conservatives can recognize the reality of avian bird flu. They won't be able to recognize it once they confirm RFK Jr., because he will blame it on sorcery or something like that. Whatever it is, a lack of good prayer crystals or chimes in the White House, something like that. I don't know. The Democrats messed up when on January 6th they didn't immediately remove Trump from office. Yeah, they need. The sad thing about this is they can take steps to do some things about this stuff. And instead of allowing him this kind of, technically he's still serving as president, so that is a little tricky. But as soon as that happened, he should have been gone. And the fact that he's just gotten away with it and the public is okay with it. Again, the guy in the video next to me, Doug, was okay with that. It's not that bad. It's no big deal. Just a protest that got a little angry. Ask him about the BLM protests. Like, all of those people, every BLM protester is violent, according to Doug. And if I'm wrong, prove me wrong, Doug. And maybe we don't dig up, video evidence of you saying stuff like that. So, all right. So he's talking with his son is here in this video, and I don't think they're actually going to discuss the issue at hand. I don't know who called his son the N-word, but I guess Doug's way of making his son feel better is have his son on a live stream and talk about DEI and laugh at the libs. Hey, okay. We can't do anything while the GOP protects them. Yeah, they can. Yeah, they can. But there isn't a lot actually settled in the law to go after them. And the GOP did fail. It is a lot of the GOP's fault. Like I've said before, 20, 30 years ago, a guy like Trump with that record, with the record he's currently got now, 34 felonies and everything else, he would not be allowed on the ticket. But he is what's holding up the Republican Party. So, stay tuned, because they already are trying to figure out a way for him to get another term. So that'll be fun. Yes, Trump's early actions mirror Project 2025, the blueprint he once dismissed. Well, and this is the thing, guys like Nick Fuentes and other conservatives came out and were tweeting, "Haha, joke's on you, libs. It is 2025. That's exactly what we're doing." Like, we know, you mouth-breathing idiot. We know. And we knew that you were lying about, not knowing about it, or like, oh, it's not going to, all that stuff can't possibly happen. Like, you're going to try to push as much of it as you can. The last project 2017 that they did, Trump adopted over 60 or 70% of it. Like they got through a lot then. And some of the other stuff just didn't go through because things like some of the initial bans on people from certain countries for religious reasons were ruled unconstitutional. So they had to come up with different ways to do it. Okay, let's get into this.
This is Black Conservative Perspective. I stumbled upon his YouTube channel a long time ago.
Stumbled upon it. Given the stuff that Doug watches, it would have been fed directly to him. Black Conservative Perspective is bad. Not the phenomenon. I mean, that user is bad. If you're getting your hot takes from this guy, they won't be accurate. So Ghetto Democrat explodes, all caps, B word, into delusional rant after Republican drops truth bomb about LA wildfires. The truth that it's very dry there and the Santa Ana winds turned a small brush fire into a blowtorch.
And I really like his stuff, and so we're commenting on it.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's already like there's already a bunch of red flags. I really like Black Conservative Perspective. I've seen quite a few of Black Conservative Perspective's videos because Jesus is Lord. Now rebuke and reprove. A colossal bumblefuck of a human being would post his stuff all the time or email me the links directly until I blocked him. I used to email him back stuff from Dan McClellan or Dr. Bird or Dr. Joe Biden. And yeah, he would stop for a little bit. And I should have done what Peter did and just send him links to pornography.
And his stuff here. You know that there's forest fires going on right now in LA,
Cali,
Los Angeles. Yeah. So there's a big kerfuffle going on about that things are not being handled properly because of the crazy Democrats and their progressive ways and DEI. You know what that means?
Yes.
That's not the kerfuffle. So a fire happens and conservatives show up to say the reason that there's this fire and it's as bad as it is because we have a Democratic governor and the mayor of LA is a Democratic woman who also is Black and a woman. I'm surprised they didn't blame her age. Oh, and she left town to go with the presidential trip to Ghana, right? She said she'd never leave. That was actually a headline in the New York Times. Mayor Karen Bass said she'd never leave Los Angeles, but she went with President Biden to a trip to Ghana for a few days. She's coming right back though because the city's en fuego. But what was not in the New York Times, as in his prominent a position, is that the Republican delegation, that would be the nine people in the Republican side that won in the state of California, state level Republican politicians, left during those fires and went down to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring, with the exception of one of those Republicans who hates Trump and actually voted for his impeachment. Actually, no, I take that back. They were not state level. They were the nine Republican representatives in Congress. 8 of 9 of them went there. Did the New York Times put that in there? No. So you're already starting to see it. Even the mainstream media and a lot of this stuff is really kind of leaning in some ways that I find problematic. Like, well, she said she'd never go and she took off. I mean, was Karen Bass as a mayor uniquely qualified to put out a freak firestorm? All right.
Oh, I know what that means.
What does DEI mean?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay, you know what it means. And so they're blaming DEI for the problems and that situation not being handled properly. So here's a new.
Yeah, they're blaming DEI, but the rubes are actually conflating it with affirmative action. Let's see if this dusty Arizonian does the same thing.
Is cast, I don't know, ABC 7.
Angeles Fire Department is launching its first ever Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Bureau. It is dedicated to ensuring a fair and equal workplace environment. Eyewitness reporter Chris Young.
How does DEI provide a fair and equal work environment? Isn't that DEI about getting in? It's not what.
No, he just did it.
Happens when you're in?
No. What a moron.
It's fair until you're white.
This kid really knows how to play his dad.
Is live in North Hollywood with more on what it entails and why it's necessary. Christian?
Ellen, Colleen, the discrepancies are stark even just on paper.
I was like,
LAFD this year hired. first ever female chief. And it says so far this year, 8% of its applicants have been women. That might sound like a small number, but it's actually twice the percentage of female firefighters currently in the department.
Okay, so I have a question for you. Who cares if it's 4% or 8% women? Why does that matter?
Well, see, that's where things get a little bit problematic, Doug. Because if it's 4% because women are otherwise qualified female applicants wouldn't go in because they feel like they couldn't possibly get through the culture or because there's other barriers put in place there. Everybody kind of loses out on the talent they could bring to bear because it's a closed shop and it's closed for goofy reasons like it's just a boys club. One of the things I was kind of evaluating here, and some of this was, this comes up a lot because the DEI, and he's going to make a point here, and I want to address that as soon as he makes it, because it's going to be part of his, like, well, what difference does the percentage make? The percentage really doesn't make anything. You start with the percentage and find out, okay, well, out of the total number of firefighters in Los Angeles, only 4% of them are women. And then you ask the question, why that is? Why? And you go from there.
For firefighters.
It doesn't.
Yeah, so the question I would
It may not.
have
We're
for
both
the
jumping to
progressive
conclusions.
types is, if it's 0%, why is that bad? If it's 4%, 8%, 50%, like, what do you want?
If you have more women in society, like 52% of the population, you would expect to see more representation across most professions than 4%. Just as sort of common sense. Why are there so few women in firefighting?
Do you want it to be 50%?
Yeah, do you want it to be 50%? Do you want it to be, what's a good number?
It's not about calibrating the number. It's about questioning why a low number is as low as it is. It's about trying to figure out why it's that low.
I mean,
80%.
and the thing is, then another question is, why do you think it's only 4% or 8%?
Why?
Estrogen.
What? Estrogen.
Or the lack of.
Testosterone.
Right. Like firefighting requires
Strength and agility and bravery and some stupidity and a
Strength and agility. Two things that women apparently do not have.
lot of
some stupidity. So you're saying women are too smart to be firefighters? That's a good
well,
point.
yeah, because men are going to run into a fire.
There are no women that are just going to be either like driven to help people who are in a fire. Like, oh, what?
Yeah, women won't. Yeah, so that's a great point. Okay.
Women won't. Why?
Let's move on.
Thank you, Daryl.
Every day, the LAFD is called upon to respond to crises. Today, it is taking a step to resolve one of its own. The department's first ever Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Bureau will launch in January, one year since its first ever female fire chief, Kristen Crowley, was appointed.
So by creating this new bureau, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion...
Okay, I want you to...
what is that? Is that a man or is that a woman?
It's a woman.
It's a woman. Can't you clearly see?
It looks like a...
This kid's going to do great. I hope he's not going to college, even in Arizona. This kid's in for a really hard time.
Hang on. I want you to listen to the words. It's a woman. I want you to listen to the words that she speaks here. And tell me what she's saying.
Was appointed.
So by creating this new bureau, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Bureau, now we actually have the staff to do the work when it comes to doing a deep dive in regard to how we do business, how we take care of one another in the fire stations and in our work environment.
The plan is to do...
Do you understand what you said?
Well, that's what HR is for.
That is not what HR is for.
A good point. She's describing the role of HR.
Yeah, not of...
She is not describing the role of HR. Jeez. DEI is a guideline. It's a guideline. It's not like affirmative action. They're not based on quotas. So I'll just get into a little something here. There is, first of all, like one of the things they're going to have a problem with is representation. Does it matter? It does. And it's not from some lefty ivory tower university out there Harvard Business Review has posted articles on this, and they've had research done on this. McKinsey. There's other places that have done this kind of stuff, talking about the benefits of diversity, equity, and inclusion training in some of these organizations to stir innovation, to improve team performance, to build public trust, to build interdepartmental trust. Like, there's been good things about this. It is not the same as affirmative action hiring, which is what these two chuckleheads are equating it with, and many on the right are doing now. Now, instead of saying affirmative action hire, they say DEI hire. DEI is not enforced anywhere. It's always usually just done as a suggestion. Trying to equate it to something like, say, the quota system that they had at the University of Michigan that seemed to constantly be in lawsuits is not fair, not accurate, and actually blows both of those systems, affirmative action and DEI, completely out of proportion. Also, DEI initiatives, when they're adopted, they usually force agencies and sections like human resources to look at discriminatory hiring practices, confirmation bias when it comes to hiring, pay gaps, and a big one is unequal access to training opportunities and advancement. So, yeah, it's generally, in a lot of cases, DEI is kind of positive, and there's a reason why DEI initiatives continue to kind of get put, or were getting pushed by corporations. Now they're bad, they're the enemy, and so they'll be shunted, and in its replacement will be a sort of colorblind meritocracy, I guess, which does not work. The studies have shown that is not, humans are not colorblind. They are not immune to biases just because they're looking at somebody performing well one way or the other. Yeah, there's going to be some issues here. So, but I don't expect these guys to have a nuanced take on it. One, because that kid's young and doesn't seem to know shit. And Doug has no excuse. He just doesn't know shit.
Firefighters.
Or of DEI, like DEI department, you said, is that the same as the HR department now?
I mean, I get that's
DEI initiatives are usually adopted throughout the departments.
kind of what it sounded like.
By adding training and enforcing accountability. Calls for accountability have echoed for years. In 2021, women's advocacy groups, including one representing female firefighters, pushed for changes at the highest level, saying a system within the department exposes them to abuse, bullying, and a culture of intimidation and retaliation.
Abuse, bullying, and intimidation. And so they need DEI.
Left out retaliation, the most negative one. It's interesting that just seemed to like bounce off his forehead.
Stop that. Do you think a fire is bullying? And
he does this a lot. If people are complaining about the conditions of a job and the job happens to have dangers, then what you need to do is you need to be able to accept all the horrible crap that happens interpersonally and with your team. You just have to accept that, because in comparison to the very real nastiness of a fire or, say, combat, it just doesn't rise to the same level of terror. Well, here's the problem with that. What he's trying to say, oh, do you think it's as bad as a fire? No, it's not as bad as a fire, but it is as bad as some of your teammates leaving you in a burning building. That's bad. What's better, knowing that your team has your back when you go into a burning building to put out a fire and possibly rescue people, knowing those guys, they will help you. Man or woman, they have your back. They are going to make sure that you are covered. We're all going to try to get home safe and sound. Or you live in a backbiting, gossipy, bullying, retaliatory environment where you're worried that if you go into a dangerous situation like that, you're hesitant to do that because you're afraid that they are going to leave you, I guess, high and dry, but
intimidating.
In some aspects, you could think about it that way.
I mean,
it's bullying the trees, intimidating the grass.
That's the stupidest thing I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't,
that actually sounds like something Pine Creek would say.
Handle,
they're not being woke to the trees.
One human.
That's actually what conservatives tend to say. Oh, well, the reason these fires are so bad is because they didn't want to harm certain shrubbery and stuff, which is not what happened. That's not what's been going on out there.
Bullying another human. How are you going to handle a fire situation and pulling someone?
Dude, these are not connected things. What kind of oaky bullshit is this? This is pathetic. This is like, like, the other firefighters don't like you. They think you're stupid and ugly. You know what, grow up. What are you going to do when you have to put out a real fire? You got them flames staring you right in the face. Well, I'm not worried about the fire anymore. I'm worried about getting shanked by one of my coworkers or left to die in one of these things or having my air cut off. Yeah, it sounds like a great place to work. It's not like the people you work with can't elevate the level of danger and risk in an already dangerous job. I guess that's not a possibility. Doug has never thought about that. Fucking unbelievable.
One out of a burning building. And shout out to Black Conservative Perspective to...
Shout out to the blacks. Who said that?
These two giggle like girls. It's nigh on impossible to fight a fire in 50. Yeah, and 50 not win. Yeah, it is impossible to do that. I mean, that was one of the issues they had with the helicopters. They had to wait for them to calm down because there was no. Even if you could, in some of the wind speeds, there's a limit when the helicopter can get above a target. It's not going to actually be able to disperse any of the water, so it was completely pointless.
It's a problem. And you said it yourself, there's not enough water to fight 5 fires. You can't build water storage in California because you can't build anything in California.
You know why that?
You can.
Water storage project in Sacramento Valley.
It's expensive.
No. He's saying it's hard to build things in California. Well, he's making it more extreme, saying you can't. It's not because of money. It's because of regulations.
No. There actually is a massive water reservoir that's right. I believe it's the St. Inez water reservoir, and it holds an enormous amount of water. But as unfortune would have it, as bad luck would have it, normally this time of year, this has been an unusually dry winter for California, but this was the best time for them to repair that system. It had tears in it, so they had emptied the reservoir so they could fix it. So they weren't able to draw on that water to fight this fire. It was just a convergence of a lot of horrible factors and bad timing. Some people are like, why were they doing that? They need that water. Well, this isn't fire season normally. Fire season is normally in the summer when things get even drier and hotter. So that's not the reason. The other reason too is like, yes, there is a lot of regulation in terms of like environmental codes and impact studies that they do. But do you know why that is? From the 1993 Malibu fire that torched that part of the city and started and spurred on a bunch of changes that needed to happen in terms of cutting back forests, building houses that aren't in those forested areas where they're going to directly catch fire if the forest catches fire. Burning, regular burning of some of the old growth and things like that to make sure that it's not a little tinderbox ready to go off at any second. But have they been doing that? No. In fact, they were supposed to take steps to not only build new houses with new fire retardant materials and property to make them as fireproof as possible. They were supposed to retrofit older homes in that area. This is just talking about Malibu with some of those fire retardant properties, and they haven't done it. And that is an issue of money. It's an issue of public money not getting into those projects to get them finished and get them up to spec. So they set goals for themselves, and it didn't work out. And that's pretty classic in California politics. And it's also very common when it comes to California water politics. Most of the water in those reservoirs, a lot of that water that is collected, almost 60% of it is controlled by a Beverly Hills billionaire couple. They make sure that they get more than enough water for their pistachio, almond, and avocado farms. I can't remember what they're called, but they own... They are the Resnicks, and they own the Wonderful Company. So if you're getting your nuts or things like that, or any of those, I think they own those little easy to peel mandarin oranges. They own all of those. They are a majority controller in a privatized water system. It's not public. It's privately owned. There's some public interface with that, but their interests they make sure that their agricultural needs get met first. And almonds are about the dumbest thing that you could possibly grow in the state of California. It takes about 1 gallon, a little over 1 gallon on average, to produce one almond. And the state of California tries to and grows a lot of them. It's bad. So he doesn't know the background of the story. A lot of this is about mismanagement between public and private entities. The public bears some of that responsibility. If they want to get out of this, you get the billionaires who are growing cash crops that are water wasteful in that state out of that business. That's the best way to do it.
So you're basically handcuffed or tied down.
So whenever you want to build something, you got to think of, where are the squirrels going to go?
They constantly get waivers all the time to avoid that. This is what's hilarious to me. They did pass things saying this is what needs to be done. This is how you responsibly build a house that is safe from mudslides if it floods, from earthquakes when you get those, and from wildfires when they spark. And most of the time, the real estate companies will get waivers to push past it anyway and build big palatial homes on the hillsides in those forests, in and along the tree lines. Otherwise, those houses wouldn't be burning. So reality belies what Doug is talking about here. It'd be awesome if that were the case. Like, well, they just can't build anything because the regulations keep that from happening. If that were the case, you wouldn't have seen the level of damage in Los Angeles. Usually when it's a fight between real estate developers' interests and the interests of environmental regulators and experts, they tip the acknowledgement goes to the real estate developers and buildings get built fast and cheap and sold at a profit.
We can't kill the squirrels. See, this is the mindset of feel sorry forism that I call it, that you're so worried. If you're a true environmentalist, progressive, you're worried about these little creatures that might die.
You're worried about families living on top of a tinderbox, Doug, not the squirrels. The regulations that kicked up in the 90s and the aughts, every time places like Malibu burned down, were designed to improve human health and well-being and our safety, collective safety and wealth. Nobody benefits from having their building burned down or having their crops get just charred like a dragon passed over it. No, the reason that this is a problem is because these people were they couldn't get out of their fee-fees over these squirrels or the smelt or something like that, or some tiny owl, that they put all these laws into practice and no one can build anything there. They couldn't build the buildings that would have protected the other buildings from the fire that burned all the buildings. What? A lot of the buildings burnt because those buildings were burnt despite the fact those environmental regulations were there anyway, because real estate developers figured out a way to get around it. Doug could find out about this if he did at least 5 minutes of some competent searching online to find some reputable articles on the history of forest fires and wildfires in and around Southern California. But he didn't. I feel sorry for his son, because if his kid's going to him for help for his homework on this kind of topic, he should not. Just go to ChatGPT, kid. Your dad knows jack shit. I dislike Polanski for a lot of reasons, but Chinatown was a great film centered around water. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to them. That movie came out in 1974. And the water politics issue in that movie, those are still around today. Hell, John Huston's character in it is diverting water for his agricultural needs. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Polanski. That is one of my favorite movies. Love that flick.
And so it's very hard. You need environmental study impacts, which takes time and money. But I actually think it's not about the environment. It's a scam to get money. So I guess you're right. It's
a scam to get money. They don't get any extra money for making those regulations. The regulators know that makes it more expensive. They know that. And if it worked, those buildings we wouldn't have seen as many buildings burn. This does not make sense. This does not track with reality. I don't know if Doug has been huffing his own farts or something, but there's something damaged up here. If what he's saying is true, then we should have seen less damage, fewer buildings scorched than what we do. But we don't. And when you actually look at why the damage is so bad, people are looking at it. It's because a lot of those new buildings weren't built to the new codes. They cut corners. Old buildings were never retrofitted. And a lot of new buildings went up in places where environmental regulations recommended they not go.
It's about these environmental groups saying, show me the money.
So
how are the environmental groups getting any money if nothing is being done their way? Because if anything was being done their way, they would have tons and tons of money to lobby more, and there would be fewer buildings built in LA, and buildings that were built would not burn as quickly. Doug's brain is a rat's nest of crap.
In order to allow people to go through with their projects, they're charging them more because of environmental concerns.
They don't. They don't charge them. Oh my God.
So the government makes a regulation saying you have to have an environmental impact study, and then guess who does the study? These environmentalists. These environmentalists. And
some of the development companies have people on staff that do those. That can cause issues as well. There are private firms that do those environmental impact studies. It just depends on the legislation in the state. Do they want it done by somebody who's, do they have state agents, state experts that do that? Or can you get it done from a licensed agent, a licensed representative, licensed expert? Or is any private firm that specializes in that good enough?
so they charge exorbitant fees, probably more money than you make.
How does he know they charge exorbitant fees? First of all, the people that are going to get charged, he's making it sound like this would happen to you. If you I went and bought my own plot of land, I wanted to build my barn, but they sent these people in from this company and they made it super expensive for me. I can't build it because of some owl. Like, that is not how this fucking works. Normally what happens is a real estate development company wants to swoop in and grab a chunk of land and turn it into a development, right? And they've got like plots all laid out. They got them mapped out, right? We're going to build 30 units in this exclusive gated new community. Now we need to do it because of the size and scope and the number of buildings they're planning to build on those certain sections of acreage. They're required to do an environmental impact study. Are those houses going to hold up if there's an earthquake? How will they handle flooding? How will they handle drought? How will they handle wildfires? Those are some of the tests that they're running for. Lots of other states have these issues too. You have to do these kinds of things in places like Louisiana or Florida. Make sure that you're not maybe built. I don't know how rubber stamped those get, but California is not the only state with environmental regulations. The state that I live in, Michigan, has certain regulations if you're going to build on wetlands, because your house will sink or because those lands are protected, and they don't want you building on them. Fortunately, we have plenty of other land that you can build on, and we don't get a lot of wildfires. But this is just... It's like these guys could sit here watching clips and just put their hands in their armpits and do this and make noises rather than this. You can't expand the property tax base without new home construction. Here they are currently permitting an avalanche slide zones. It's silliness. Yeah. And that's part of it. As far as the developers go, the developers are like, we make money selling these units, selling off these houses, and the city and the state makes more money because you get an increase in the number of people paying property taxes. Unless you live in Orange County, where I don't think there is any property tax because the Okies made sure that was never allowed. Because property tax is theft. That's not how any of this works. No, nothing works like this. It's fabulous watching this.
And yeah, it's a bit of a racket.
We've been trying to build for 40 years. The reality is the left will not let it advance. There should have been more water storage, and that would have helped save lives and property.
But I mean,
the water storage is privately owned. Most of it is privately operated. And one giant reservoir was currently empty due to it needing repairs. That's just bad luck. This is the time of year when they would fix that. They don't normally expect wildfires, at least of this magnitude, to happen in January, and they did.
what we are hearing from California officials is that this is a water pressure issue, that the water has to come down, and that in some areas the water pressure was lost as they tried to reestablish.
No, the reason the water pressure was lost was because they had used so much water at the Palisades fire. This is so stupid to me. A municipal fire system is built for handling urban fires. The LA urban system is built for handling fires within the city. Very few urban fire suppression systems, those water mains and fire hydrants that the trucks can hook up to, are designed to handle a wildfire at the scale that the Pacific Palisades fire was, with those winds, flames burning at that intensity and moving at that rate. That is not something that as far as I know, any urban fire pacification system can put out. And they used so much water initially in the Pacific Palisades one that it did reduce pressure to fight the other 4 fires that popped up, or the other 5. I think there were 6 at one point.
That pressure. It's not an absence of water. There is water.
You know why I'm laughing?
My brain turned off.
She said it's not an absence of water. It's a water pressure issue. What causes water pressure?
I don't
think. A lot of water.
A lot of water.
She's asking about it.
I whistled.
Wheeze.
I wheezed. I mean, you learn this in basic science of potential energy, right?
The state water storage was full. That was not the issue. It was the sun. I mean, part of it was in the fact that all their other reservoirs were full when this started, but one of them was empty for repair. But at the same time, even the firefighters at LAFD and the Los Angeles County Fire Department have said that this is the worst case scenario, that you get these Santa Ana winds in a dry period and you get a spark, and those things basically turn the wildfire into a flamethrower. That's what we saw. It happened. It finally happened. And were the buildings prepared for it? No, because most of them were not retrofitted with fire retardant stuff. And even if they had been, a fire of this intensity still would have scorched them.
How do you get this potential energy of water pressure? Now, you can do it through pumping, but if you have more water...
They were pumping onto the Pacific Palisades fire, and it reduced the water pressure.
That's the easiest way.
Well, it's the same issue. If you've got water storage up on a hill or water storage with pumps, then you can maintain that water pressure. The reality is when they needed water to come out of those hydrants, it was not available. You can get done in Canada or Australia.
It was available, but they were using an enormous amount for the Pacific Palisades fire. These guys are basically, well, hang on, it's their fault that they can't put out this fire in the city. It's not a city fire. It was a sequence of wildfires that popped up and started burning different sections of the city simultaneously with an with an unprecedented intensity, thanks to those Santa Ana winds.
In 2 years, we have made it impossible to build things, and that is a government problem.
And yet things keep being built there.
Is that the problem in this case with this massive, the fire of this scale is not just about can they put out this house or that house. This is a fire that is being accelerated by incredible winds.
And government?
Yeah, I agree with her. I actually think, imagine the best possible people, the complaint is from the Republican side that there's too much DEI and this is why it's been mismanaged. But I actually think when you have even a small fire and guess how fast the winds were yesterday in LA?
No clue. 30 mile an hour.
50 gusting to 100, 60 to 100
yes.
In some places. When you have that type of wind and you got any type of fire, it's going to spread.
Yeah.
Forest. Instead, across the country, we have turned.
And this wasn't any kind of wind. These were 99 mile an hour winds and gusts and over. It's also because some of these rich homes had their own sprinkler systems that were going off and messing with the water pressure even after the house was burnt down. Of course.
Turn them into tinder boxes. We see it. And frankly, if we don't let the loggers get in and in a targeted and appropriate way get that underbrush out there, we will see more terrible visions like we have seen on your screen.
Is that the type of woman you'd want to date?
I don't know. It's a tough ask, but I think I could.
Tough what?
Tough ask. Oh,
I didn't hear the K.
Okay. He's getting older.
What's going on, Uncle Charlie?
What's the guy, the Wheezy from Toy Story?
Oh, the penguin. I don't even know what his name is. I think it's Wheezy.
We want to, at a time when people are dying, decide that a country of immigrants is failing or people are dying because...
Check this out. I'm going to show you how I afforded this car.
For God's sake.
Okay, you ready? All right,
the same very people that built this country, because the last time I checked, y'all didn't say that anything was wrong with the White House, and I can promise you it was my ancestors that built the White House. So listen, if we have been good enough to...
Her ancestors...
I'm confused.
She said her ancestors built the White House.
What do you mean by your ancestors? If you're an American citizen, then yes, your ancestors. But
she means African Americans, people taken from Africa. Get with the program.
Sorry, my bad.
So listen, if we have been good enough to...
Is that controversial now? I mean, the controversial bubble or the conservative bubble that kind of feeds itself on creating controversies out of well-established facts is unknown to me. Even when I was a conservative, when I was young and stupid, it was mostly on the libertarian side, and I don't remember feeding myself this many grievance virtue signaling issues, but these guys are on a tear.
Build this country. We are good enough to serve and die overseas. We are good enough to serve in other ways. And the fact that...
Well, I think it just depends. Or it's like, not all black people are good enough, same as not all white people. It's just...
What?
It's whoever's fair and good for the job. Like whoever
are you saying
tests the highest scores, whoever's the strongest, whoever's the fastest, whatever.
Are you saying not all Black lives matter when it comes to jobs?
What? Who said that?
Act as if...
I love how these guys are trying to pivot Black Lives Matter into something about meritocracy, as if that's not the problem. Jesus Christ. I mean, way to continue to miss the point. That was never the point of Black Lives Matter. That claim was directed at law enforcement and reactions to law enforcement and their abuses towards certain members of the population. Yeah, Uncle Ted, Doug is stepping into new territories. He's gone full mask off with his kid. Yeah. I can't take GOP stupidity anymore. It's getting harder for me to deal with it because this has gotten to a point now, Doug, with almost every issue that you end up talking to him about, all of it is bad. I mean, it's the same reason why there's no point in having like his favorite issue is talking about trans people, an issue that he has had an opportunity to discuss with some of the most knowledgeable and patient, and I don't know how to say this, comprehensive people in terms of their understanding of the situation, how to communicate it, available on YouTube. And he continues to just be a disgusting bigot about the issue. Even after going on for months going, oh, I just want to talk to people. I just want to have a discussion. I have questions that need answering. And he got those questions. Asked those questions to people like Dr. Ben and to Arden and to Stephanie Helms and others and Bree from Hive Psi and others. And one ear and out the other because he wants to troll. So that's the thing that bothers me the most with most of his content is like he'll watch this kind of stuff and try to figure out a way to make it worse. Not in a fun, like he's not being critical. He's just being gross. If you see people getting into a heated argument and the only thing that you can talk about is his haircut or her attitude or the volume of her voice or something like that, you're just a superficial knob. Hey, good to see you, Mark Reed. Yeah. Michael Deaton, 4 years of the idiocy to go, folks. Hold your butts. Yeah. Where did he find this guy?
Only white men are the ones that are capable. Because right now, you're sitting at a table with 3 very capable black women.
I like this black conservative guy.
The cackle.
You want to hear what he sounds like?
Hey, you know what a white man with some cojones should say every single time one of these race hustlers go on national television and claim that...
How is she a race hustler? See, this is the problem. This is the black conservative perspective guy. I think his name is Greg or Gary or something like that. I can't remember. He's saying that she is a race hustler. Why?
That black people built this country, as if only black people built the country, right? That is what they mean when they say that. The question should be under direction of who? Under whose direction? Because if you got...
You know what he's saying, right?
I do.
The black A lot of black people built this country, but under the direction of the white man.
Is it a $17 million budget?
Jesus Christ. Well, that guy's got some problems. I mean, we all know Pine Creek does, but that black conservative perspective, dude, that is a problematic take. And I don't think history backs his take up.
Cut to an $800 million budget. I don't think that those are the issues that have caused this horrendous.
Yeah, I kind of agree with this woman here. So what happened? What the Republicans are saying is they cut the budget, the fire budget. So less money means less people.
Who cut it? The Republicans or the Democrats?
Democrats.
Gotcha.
California is run mostly by Democrats. And so
they cut the budget generally. New equipment went to the fire department.
But it was only like 2% cut.
Okay.
So it's not like a huge difference. And yes, they should have done raking of the leaves and the dead wood in the forest to help mitigate the spread of fires. And yes, they should have had more water.
That is not what needs to happen. Okay, this is very okay. This is one of the reasons why the regulations that he's talking about, well, they put the regulations there and you can't build anything. A lot of the people that have built their houses in places where they are going to be in trouble if a wildfire happens there, they have old growth in their backyard or part of their property, and they don't want it disturbed. They don't want to cut back. And when the city comes out or the state's like, we really recommend that you do something about that because that is a hazard to your home if it catches fire. And they would get repeated complaints from those homeowners. I'm not cutting this. I'm not raking that. I'm not disturbing my little garden because the state, some environmentalist wants me to. I don't know if these guys are capable of understanding this. There are a lot of stupid people who are conservative that live in the state of California. A lot of them. Tons of them, in fact. And a lot of them, especially when they've got their house and it's their little castle, they don't want it messed with. Even if an expert shows up and says, you know, your house is on a hill that will probably wash away in a really bad thunderstorm, a really bad flood, will just carry that away. Or it's going to go up like a box of matches because of the forest that you built it next to when you weren't supposed to. And even if they give them recommendations, here's the bare minimum that you should do. Clear this underbrush, clear that ground cover, cut these trees back. It wasn't getting done.
On reserve. But my opinion is it still would have been a catastrophe. I actually don't know how these fires were started in the first place. Was it arson? It's either an accident, arson,
Campers,
or lightning strike.
Yeah, no, they did not cut the budget for the fire departments. They didn't. There were budget cuts. There were budget adjustments across the entire budget for the city of LA, but those budgets weren't cut. And there has been a pissing match between the mayor's office and some of the fire departments about new equipment and things like that. So some of them are actually, in that case, are kind of repeating points that I think he might like. Hey, we had cuts. We didn't get the stuff that they did get stuff. They didn't get everything that they wanted, but they did get new stuff, and they were not cut. To the extent that conservatives were going online, well, they cut at $17 million, so they just were unprepared and under-equipped for it. Like, even if they had doubled the size of the LA fire department, not the county one, just the city one, even if they just miraculously doubled the size of it, would not been able to handle the severity of those fires. The math, it doesn't math. Michael Deaton, yeah, State Farm canceling home insurance, rightfully so, because they knew a big fire in those areas was inevitable. The homeowners Pikachu facing when the next year their shit burns down. Yeah, this is, and I don't know if this is going to finally be the type of canary in the coal mine that people pay attention to when insurance companies cannot afford to pay you back for the house that is in an area of the country that the climate makes it too expensive to repair. You are constantly living on the edge of your house being disappearing in a sinkhole, falling into the ocean, sliding down a hill, or being burned away. Or being, I mean, what else? What other disasters do you have? So yeah, until they change the building codes. And I mean, if people are going to be able to live in areas like that and to minimize the amount of damage that they're getting from that, they're going to have to structurally change the expectations they have on the kinds of houses they have, on the kinds of streets that they're in, on the kinds of, plant life that they have around them. A lot of stuff would have to change. If they continue doing it the way that they're doing it, they can rebuild and it will burn away again. And no private company is going to have the capital to back it up, no matter how high the primaries are. They're going to be counter-insured by another company that will go bankrupt on it, and everybody's going to have to go hat in hand to the federal government asking for some kind of emergency relief. And you'll see that for some people because the government will end up subsidizing some of the very wealthy people to have their houses rebuilt. But you'll probably, I guarantee it, you will see the poorer neighborhoods that their aid, their rebuilding will be delayed. If you don't believe me, go to New Orleans and ask the people there what happened after Katrina.
But I have an opinion on why DEI is bad.
Do tell.
You want to give your opinion first? You want to hear?
Oh no. Okay, I might just end the stream with this because I after this I'll probably have to like lie down before I stroke out. But no one prepares for the greatest disaster every single year. They only do this to Democrat-run cities. Red states redline people of color into hazardous areas and don't report on the disasters. That is a really good point. That is a very good point. That's what happened in places like New Orleans. They just, those words, they're still underwater. Oh, yeah. I remember a report about some of the people that ended up being relocated to Houston. They never went back to Louisiana. They never went back to New Orleans because there wasn't anything to go back to. And now it's terrible because it seems like, every other month Houston is underwater. So they're really not getting a break. And Trump wants to eliminate FEMA. Yeah, because the states can handle this all. The states aren't going to be able to handle this all. I've got news for any conservative that thinks that they can just leave this kind of stuff up to the states. This isn't going anywhere. And it's kind of weird that authoritarians are kind of thinking like, oh, we can just like let the states handle their own business, and it's like 50 separate countries. No. In order to handle a lot of these issues, the easiest thing to do would just be to eliminate the states. One government, one country. Local representation at city and population levels is determined by a census that should be taken every 5 years instead of 10 to watch for migration differences. But that representation carries out, and the secondary, the first consideration will be environmental impact of these cities, these population centers, where they, what they need, food, land quality, and then all the other considerations come second if they want to take this seriously. Otherwise, you're going to have places like Florida, parts of Texas, most of the southern ends of the states in the Gulf Coast, most of California, at least the southern half of California, dealing with these issues over and over again. Does natural disasters costing the country billions, if not trillions of dollars, and we don't learn a single thing. We just figured we can pick up and we can rebuild and we can repeat the exact same thing all over again, as if evidence of insanity is not repeating the same stupid mistake over and over and over again.
Your mind.
I want to hear yours first.
Okay, so, and I'm a man of the people, you know that. I like to figure out ways to resonate with the humans.
Yeah.
Subhumans.
And so DEI is bad, and I'm going to speak not to you, but to the woke progressives out there who are full of compassion and love.
I don't think he's been talking to a lot of progressives lately.
You actually do end up doing more harm than good through DEI programs, and here's why.
Is there any evidence for this claim? I bet there isn't.
When you have a bias, when you have a desire for diversity based on an identity like skin shade, or I'm gay or whatever, if you're so desirous for someone of that identity to get this particular job, what ends up happening is you start letting your bias cloud your judgment.
DEI is not about putting your preference for the kind of person you want in a job. DEI is about checking your preference for who you want or who you think would appear to be the best choice in that job. The appearance of the person, as opposed to what other factors they can bring to it. Maybe the police captain doesn't need to be a 6'8" Norwegian-looking guy. Maybe a 5'4" black woman with better credentials and a better handle on new law enforcement techniques is the better fit. But because the 99% of the police force are a bunch of taller, white Norwegian-looking guys, they can't imagine a 5'4" black woman giving them orders. Because just like the woke progressives that Doug will accuse here of, like, they just need to see the same thing reflected back at them. You don't think that doesn't apply for simple-minded people in other situations? The whole point of DEI is to question your biases, not find a way to shove your bias to the front of the line. He doesn't even know how to steel man what DEI is. And DEI isn't even that, like, DEI is basically like a lot of corporate whitewashing for stuff, for lack of a better phrase. It's a way to excuse a lot of the problems that corporate meritocracy usually screws up. And the fact that it is usually about who you know. It's not so much about what you can do, but who you know, who your connections are, how you look for that role, how you seem in that role, how they think you'll gel with that group. Just looking at your grades and your accomplishments, and then just popping you into that group and saying, you know what, we did the math, and this person is exactly right for this group. That's not how a lot of those choices get made. And when that nuance starts taking place, biases start to creep in. The point of DEI, weak as it is to force those biases, is to reflect on those biases and call them into question, not to do what he's talking about. What he's talking about is a quota system for hiring, which existed in some affirmative action systems. It does not exist with DEI. These are categorically different things.
Do you agree with that?
Star Wars, yeah.
Star Wars?
It's what's the line? Yoda says something like fear clouds your judgment, or the Sith clouds your judgment.
Yeah. So let's say you're a woke progressive and you're a boss or you're an HR person and you want to hire someone and you really want a black person, and they come in for the interview and their interview doesn't really go well.
But you really want a black person, so you're going to use DEI to get that black person, despite the fact that they flubbed their... He doesn't know what he's talking about.
If you're so desirous for this black person to have a job because of this type of feel sorry for them, you're going to say, well, you're going to make excuses for that person. Mm-hmm. You're going to say, well, maybe they just had a bad day. Or maybe they were nervous. Maybe this, maybe that. You start bending the standards. You start lowering the standards.
That is corruption. And that is the kind of thing that things like DEI are designed to prevent. Because that's a person that who is motivated to fulfill an objective, a pre-existing bias. We've got a new spot open, and what we really need is an Asian person in there. So I'm really going to do what I can to make whatever the Asian candidate comes in, make them look better for this particular. That's not DEI. I really hope if he hears this, if he sees this video, this doesn't break his heart. That is not DEI. He is literally talking about the opposite of DEI. DEI does not want to see what he's describing take place in the workplace. That's why he votes. That's why he has to vote for somebody like Trump, because he's delusional. He's delusional about the trans issue. He's delusional about DEI. This is delusional thinking. He could get over this if he just fucking read something. Stop getting your news from Facebook. This guy's brain, he's suffering from some critical brain rot here. He needs to get out, touch grass, as the kids say, and crack a fucking book.
In order for this person to come in. Does that happen? Is it guaranteed to happen? No. Will it happen all the time? No.
Thank you, PC.
But this is the problem with DEI programs, is it allows this bias and this desire to override merit, what is objectively better.
No, it isn't. I want to see proof of what he's talking about. And when he gives me proof, it better not fucking be from a study on affirmative action from a quota system in the early aughts or in the 90s. Because short of that, what he's talking about is not real. This is not a thing. DEI is just a setup of guidelines. If you've got somebody sitting in a position to hire new people and they set about pre-selecting people of certain races to get those jobs. That is the opposite of diversity, equity, inclusion.
And so that leads into the second problem with DEI, is that people realize this. People are not stupid. And when I say people, I mean all.
A lot of people are stupid. That's just math. If you look at the way the IQ distribution goes, a lot of people are dumb. Not as many as you think, but a lot. Enough to make a difference. Look at who just got into the White House. Again, after being phenomenally unpopular, even with some of the people who voted for him then, and didn't get the big tax returns that they thought they would get. And they voted for him again this time. And they're not going to get good tax returns in a couple of years, too, if his tax plan goes the way it's planning to go. Doug living in a fantasy that we live in a meritocracy rather than an oligarchy that he happily voted for. Yeah.
All people. And so when you go to any type of business and you see a minority, what they call a marginalized person, the question that arises in their head, is this person really qualified, or did they get in because of this bias and desire for this certain skin shade to get in?
No, but bigots usually do that. I don't think I've ever been in a situation in my place of work, which has DEI policies, because I'm a civil servant. I have never been confronted with people from various backgrounds, of various racial or ethnic backgrounds, even some people who have come in from other countries and work for, are now citizens working for that particular civil service department. I have never thought the reason that I think they got in here was because somebody wanted someone from Pakistan here. And because they were angling for at least one Pakistani individual in somewhere in the section, department, bureau, whatever, they picked this person as soon as that person appeared. I have never thought that. I know plenty of conservatives like Doug that think that this is reality when it in fact is not. Do you know what happens when you remove DEI from the equation? Do you know who it affects first? The first group that it affects first. I bet many of the people, a lot of them don't represent the majority of the demographics that watch my show. But they can all tell you it's women. Because men are stupid, generally speaking, especially when it comes to issues like this. Doug and his son are demonstrating that. Generally, American males acting this particular way and espousing these kinds of thoughts and opinions on things are remarkably stupid about dealing with this shit. Affirmative action was incredibly beneficial to hiring women, even with the flawed quota systems that existed in some of the universities in the country. Some of them had really insane protocols for what they wanted to do and established the kind of quota systems that might compare with what Doug's talking about here. But affirmative action was never the boogeyman that conservatives thought it was. And DEI has less teeth than that. It doesn't have any teeth at all. And now with Trump in there, the opposite is the case. If you say anything about DEI, we're going to get you. It's politically incorrect now to talk about DEI under President Trump. He's made it politically incorrect, which I find interesting. These guys are supposed to be free speech absolutists. Absolutely everything's on the table. But I'm not supposed to talk about DEI. In certain jobs, if you're a federal employee, you're supposed to rat out people who are covertly pushing DEI. Don't know how that works. And it doesn't matter because they don't know how it works, because the thing that they think DEI is probably very close to what Doug thinks it is, which is an affirmative action system that has been basically adjudicated away. Mark says, feel sorry for him. Can I have a definition for that ideology? It's basically, if you've ever heard somebody talk about the tree-hugging hippie, the bleeding heart liberal, that's what he thinks anybody on the left is. That's how moldy his view of the right and left divide is. Anybody who's conservative is probably firm-minded, critical thinking, skeptical, wants facts and figures, can suppress their feelings, can withhold their urges, all that good stuff. Feel sorry for ism. That is the tree-hugging, bleeding heart, woke liberal that can't stop empathizing for people and will just give away all their money and give away the store and everything like that. And these people will just take advantage of them, and that'll be the end of society as we know it. Feel sorry for ism. I mean, I don't know if you guys had the bleeding heart liberal in Australia. I can't imagine that you didn't. I know it was in the UK. It was huge here, especially in the bleeding heart liberal thing was like the pejorative that was used on anybody who protested the Vietnam War. You were a bleeding heart liberal because you cared more about those Vietnamese people over there than you cared about our soldiers, which was a hell of a thing to say because many of those people protesting that lost friends and family because they were sent over to kill those Vietnamese people. But yeah, Doug's politics are as old as the idea of the bleeding heart liberal.
And it ends up hurting the marginalized person because now the perception of society is maybe they're not good enough.
That would be a problem if that's what was happening, possibly, but that's not what's happening.
So imagine you do the opposite. Imagine I'm a boss and you come into my workplace and you want a job and I say, oh, you're black. Well, you're half black, half white. But most people would say you're black. I really want black people to work here. But since you're black and since I don't want to hurt black people, I don't want to hurt marginalized people, your standards are actually higher. You have to outdo the white people. You have to outdo the Asians.
Why should they? How does that fix it? He's actually projecting the model minority in this case onto his son. Because I don't want to be seen as giving you an unfair advantage. You need to blow them out of the water. Is Doug so far up his own ass he doesn't think that minority families don't tell their kids that they need to work harder, win bigger, excel greater at these things? They're not. This man is a colossal nitwit. Liz Allen, feel sorry for him applies to conservatives more. It is directed at themselves. Well, I mean, it really is. And the idea that, like, I mean, just with the DEI thing, the fact that I'm going to vote for a guy who's going to get rid of this woke nonsense. Pine Creek said that. The reason that people voted for Trump was because they were tired of this woke stuff. Oh, really? I thought it was because eggs were expensive and they wanted cheaper gas. No, it was because of the woke stuff. Oh, okay. So they want the woke stuff to go away. Yeah, they're for freedom of speech. We want to be able to say whatever we want, unless it's woke. If it's woke, get the fuck out. Yeah, liberal is a conservative party, actually. So not really. But yeah, I get the sentiment. I think pinkos were the term. Yes, pinkos works. We had that too. But that was more of a 50s thing when they were, at least here, when they were sympathetic to communists, especially over in Hollywood. We had the House on Un-American Activities Committee. But yeah, that's still the same thing. Pinkos, liberals. That probably melts. Maybe not. Pine Creek's not that daffy. But guys like Jesus is Lord, when you try to explain to them, like, liberal in every country outside of the United States means conservative. Like, generally laissez-faire, less regulatory government. Yeah, they don't get it. The nattering nabombs of negativism. Thank you, Steph. Who says that? Why do black people have to outdo white people? What? Well, no, that's the thing. Like, he's saying, like, no, as an employer, I'm going to tell you, I got to hold you to an even higher standard. That way it's not seen that I'm taking pity on you. Like, what the? No, you don't. If you've got two, like, this is like one of his famous his hypotheticals. Oh, you got two people, both equally qualified, but one's got $1 million. Which one do you hire? The one with $1 million, because that person's better. Yeah, that's absolutely absurd to me. Like, oh no, I got to make sure. I mean, your qualifications can't merely be equal to all the other candidates that I'm looking at, or even just the top candidates that I'm looking at. You have to be head and shoulders better before I can justify hiring you. That way, it doesn't look bad on me or on you that you look like an affirmative action hire. Seriously? Is he afraid the Klan's going to come get him? The only people who are concerned about that shit are racists. The only people who clutch their pearls over stuff like that and get worked up. Did you hire that person and they were actually underqualified? You just picked them because they were black or Asian or Hispanic or First Nation. That's why you did it, right? Or a woman. And you feel sorry for him getting out of control, wasn't it? You can tell that person to go shampoo your crotch at that point. No, I hired the best person for the team based on their credentials, their background, their knowledge base, their skills, etc. How's that? Well, didn't you hold them to a higher standard? You wouldn't want the other people in the team thinking that you just took pity on this person because they're not a white guy. I've got news for any of the people out there. I think that I've met some white people, some white guys in my careers, in my work history, that maybe got their job because of pity. Maybe.
So if the Asians need to score 100, you need to score 110. And I'm going to make that public. Can you imagine what happens then?
Yeah, the world implodes.
Well, the progressives won't like that. But now let's say it's a doctor. I'm hiring you to be a doctor. And you have to have, because you're black, you have to have more experience. You have to have higher SAT scores, higher everything. And then let's say a woman and her son goes into the doctor and they have a choice to choose the black doctor or the white doctor. Who are they going to choose?
Probably the black one, because he's higher qualified.
I didn't hear that. What?
The black doctor, sir, because he's more qualified.
Right. Because they discriminated against him. So you lowered the bar for white people. You lowered the bar for white people to justify the racism people feel about the person of color. That's what happened. There's the bar here, and no, it's higher for the person of color. That way, when people come in, they know that person actually had to hit a higher standard, but the white person just got in. Okay, so all you did was create the system that you were terrified of, where the white candidates are held to a lower standard, so everybody's just like, well, they got in because of pity. They just... I mean, what in the actual hell... Jesus. Hey, good to see you back. How you doing?
Right.
With higher accolades and better
so
education.
If that is true, and I'm not saying this is what should be done, but if that is true, that people will start choosing the minority because they know they have had to excel above and beyond, then the opposite is true. That if your bias and desire for minorities to get jobs is true, that it actually lowers the standards a little bit, then
DEI is not a bias for hiring people of color. It's about removing the bias of hiring people based on their color. It's about trying to reflect on the totality of the candidate in front of you and what their life experience is like, where they come from. That representation is important because it reflects where they came from, challenges they've met, skills they can bring to bear in a situation because they have a background and an upbringing that is different. This would be no different than talking about people from totally different class settings. If you were talking about two black individuals, one raised in an incredibly wealthy home, all of the privileges, went to an Ivy League school, versus somebody who came from a working class family, also went to college, but went to like a Big Ten school, an ag school, something like that. And you're comparing these two candidates, both qualified, both skilled, but each one of them represents more than just the sum of their accomplishments and the totality of their skills. They have a background that informs who they are, how they communicate, how they deal with people, how they run a group, how they function within that group. And if you just end up operating off of weird stereotypes, out of simplistic stereotypes, you discredit everyone. You end up depriving everyone of the potential benefits that both candidates, frankly, can bring to bear in a situation, depending on and it's based on which one is the best fit for the job. And removing the bias of just thinking, what's easiest to do? Just hire a white person. That way we don't ruffle any feathers, because that's what's going to happen now. That is actively what Trump is pushing for right now. If Doug has a company on his own and he wanted to hire somebody, he wanted to hire his son, it's nepotism, so he's probably fine. But if he wanted to hire his son's friend who was black, is the Trump administration going to look at that, or the state of Arizona going to look at that as him being a DEI hire, quote unquote? The easiest way to avoid the appearance of that is just to hire only white people. I didn't take pity on anyone. Fucking unbelievable horseshit.
Then you have to admit that's going to hurt the minority in that case with DEI, and you would admit that it helps the minority. There's like, oh, I want the black guy. No.
It would help the minority if you raise this. Never mind the fact that most of them within their own culture are elevating the standards for their success in relationship to the white competition anyway. Never mind the fact that that's already happening. What he's talking about represents this is a solution to a problem that does not exist with DEI.
Oh, I don't want the white guy. I want the black guy. And it's like it's esteem. It's like, oh, thank you. You want me.
Very good, Sam. Very good.
Did you agree with all that?
Yeah, for the most part. I just say, kind of in more dumber layman's terms of just, I think it really just depends on who's qualified for the job. It doesn't matter what you look like. It's just if you're,
that's the point of DEI.
The whole topic of if you're a firefighter, it's just who should be the strongest, the fastest, and
okay. But if you do that, the strongest, the fastest, you're going to get no women actually fighting fires.
Correct.
You don't necessarily need all of them to be the strongest and the fastest.
Well, I shouldn't say no women. There might be some freaks of nature out there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like if there are women, it should be freaks of nature. Ones that can keep up with the standard that they've set. So I think, yeah, like you said, if the standards are dropping just because you want to include more people, same with the military too. It's just kind of like, well, then what are we doing? What's the point?
Are standards dropping?
Trying to protect and serve, or are we just trying to appeal to an agenda?
What do you think?
Are we trying to protect and serve, or are we trying to serve an agenda where we don't hurt anybody? We don't hurt conservatives' feelings by bringing in people of different backgrounds who look a little bit different than us, so that our face, our skin color isn't represented in the ranks uniformly. Therefore, what? You don't think that doesn't damage? Like what? I'm pretty sure. I'm very curious. Somebody had asked it in there. One, what Pine Creek's opinion is about Pete Hegseth, our new Secretary of Defense, who is terribly underqualified based on every opinion that I've gotten from any military type person that I respect and know, or not know, but read. And does he believe that women don't belong in combat? Because he made a short that made it sound like he doesn't. I like to call this take the appeal to fairness fallacy, where the face of the statement seems fair/reasonable until you take 10 seconds to actually engage with it. Yeah. And as soon as you start applying it to different situations, it almost immediately falls apart because it often creates more conflict and issues than it would ever possibly resolve. Liz Allen's marginalized groups had to work 2 times as hard to get half as far without these protections. Right. And what he's actually saying is, hey, you know what? Let's make sure that 2 times as hard standard is in place. What he doesn't understand is that the problem with racism in the United States is, despite the fact that marginalized people work twice as hard for half the protections, they also could be 2 or 3 times more successful, but that would be discounted because they weren't white. And if you don't believe me, take a look at the burning of Black Wall Street in Oklahoma over essentially a white mob losing its shit. And not the only incident like that. But I mean, what do I know? I actually have the book. I have a book on writings on critical race theory, and Doug thinks it's a money-making scheme because that's his, his deep take on everything.
Their answer is, if you were to ask them, like, let's say I was to ask them, what's wrong with all firefighters being white? What do you think they'd say?
White supremacy.
And I'd say, so what? What's wrong with that?
White supremacy. No. You know what? Forget it. Margaret said, wasn't he a Fox talk show host or something? If you're talking about Pine Creek, I think he wanted to be. But he's well, I don't know. He's from Canada, so he'd probably fit right in with those people.
With the fire department. Like, let's say white supremacy reigns strong in fire departments, and they're all white, big, strong men. What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with white supremacy in a department paid for by taxpayers to solve the fire problems of the entire public? What's wrong with that? Okay. So if you've got a group of people who, like Doug said, well, this is bad. What's bad here is that these people are sitting there and they're thinking I want to get a black person for this job. I need to get a woman for this because the feel sorry forism is just so strong in him. Okay. If you have a white supremacist group, a gaggle of white supremacists running a municipal fire department, what do you think they do when it comes hiring time, Doug? I want to get a big white guy who's down with the cause. It doesn't matter if he's a screw up. It doesn't matter if he's a drunk. It doesn't matter if he's an abuser. He believes what we believe. He's good to go. He's a fellow traveler and he's white. You get that exact, that's what's wrong with white supremacy. The thing that's wrong with white supremacy in a fire department, Doug, is the exact same dynamic you described for your take on DEI. I cannot believe this man is this oblivious to his own train of thought. I think I'm just going to leave it there because that puts me at about, an hour and 30 minutes. And I don't think they're going to actually get into it. Yeah, they're just going to leave that up there the entire time and continue babbling about this incoherently. So my recommendation to anybody, don't watch Pine Creek. I can't avoid it. Just wait until I watch it and I'll tell you about it. And then you won't. You can blame me for exposing you to it. Doug's an idiot. Why would you have an all-white force in an area that diverse unless you want white supremacy? Yeah, well, I just don't understand how he actually got away with doing that. Like he's just describing the DEI as about this problem that sets in your mind, like, well, I'm going to pre-approve the type of person I want for this position, and they're going to be black, or they're going to be Mexican, or they're going to be First Nations, or they're going to be a woman. And what's wrong with having a bunch of white supremacists if they happen to be the most qualified guys? Because those guys in that environment will start hiring additional people and new hires based on the same shitty thinking that Doug just described. We need somebody who looks white, who acts white, who talks the talk, who is in with our group, who understands, he really gels. Man, Doug, blow the dust off your library card and start reading. I don't think you work a full 40-hour week. You've got time. Crack a book or a magazine, read. For the love of Christmas, read. Jeff taking one for the team. It really kind of feels like it with this one. I unsubbed years ago. Yeah, I did too. Oh, quite a while back. Mark says, personally, I like a multicultural team. It's great to have different perspectives on problems. Yeah, but remember, Mark, you're Australian, and all of you suffer from feel sorry forism because all of you are liberals. According to Doug, he'd be fascinated. And no, we're not all liberals over here. I don't think that word means what you think it means, Doug. Anyway, thank you everybody in the chat. It's good to be back. Happy 2025. I'm just going to get rid of that because that's, oh God. So yeah, kicking it off with another thing. I have not a live stream, but a live premiere going of a video that I recorded earlier, getting back into covering Darth shenanigans on TikTok. While TikTok is still with us, I've gone back 5 months, and some of that will be dropping 12 noon my time, Eastern Standard Time. So kind of keep an eye out for that. I will try to join in the comments, but that will be around my lunchtime-ish. I may not be able to, but I will try to drop in and say hi to anybody that catches it live. If not, once it premieres, it'll be out there. It is episode 1 of Darth Dawkins' TikTok tantrums, so keep an eye out for that. Other than that, yeah, I hope the rest of you have a great night or morning or afternoon, depending on what time zone you're in. And you'll see me, not live, tomorrow afternoon, and I will be back probably with another live stream. Let's face it, whenever I feel like it, but sooner than, several months. So take care, everybody. Thanks again.